The Citroen C3 Aircross is today in our full review on Autogefühl, your #1 resource for in-depth car reviews and your #1 community to discuss cars today with Thomas. We're going to take a detailed look on the exterior, the interior, which is pretty interesting, I can promise you, and of course a driving experience. And we'll also tell you something more, how does it compare to other vehicles, the small size SUV segment. It's at the moment so many new cars popping up there, and also it's SUV instead of vans, because this one here will also replace the Picasso version of the C3 that was formerly there. So let's dig deeper into the details in full HD, full screen and full length. Let's go! The Citroen C3 Aircross is, by the way, on the same platform than the Opel Crossland X and also built in Spain in the Zaragoza plant from Opel. Very interesting what they've done here in the front, because we have very unique design features, as the front logo here directly dissolves into the LED daytime running lights. Pretty interesting. And then they also have this design scheme of those, rounded rectangles, or how you want to call it, those rectangles which have all four rounded ends. How would you call such a geometric form? I don't really know. That's not my kind of stuff. And again, also with color accentuations, and you will see them all the way on the exterior and also on the interior. And I think that they have carried out this design scheme all the way through the car is, I think, a very interesting aspect. Of course, the overall impression from the front is, very round and rather a little bit bulkier. What do you think? 4 meters 15 or 13'6" is the total length, so still quite short overall. That's good for getting along in the city. But you see this higher SUV building style, which looks a little bit strange maybe from the exterior. You will profit from that on the interior. They also have styling choices right here. This one is, by the way, the top trim level Shine, but you'll especially have different styling levels on the interior, and also a lot of color choices on the exterior with contrast colors here, for example. You have 3 different roof contrast colors, for example. Here we see a dark, black roof to the brighter exterior. Rims, 16-inch steel it starts, then 16-inch aluminum, and then 17-inch aluminum or aluminium, if you prefer British or American English. So those ones are top rims here, and they of course also look best to the car. Really characteristic are those roof rails here in the contrast color. They are, pretty much screaming out. And another interesting feature is this last rear window with a paint on the exterior, or those wraps, but they are really glued on pretty tight. Another design element, and also for weight savings, this one is not from glass but from polycarbonate. So if you hear that here, the glass, and now you hear the difference. This one here, the polycarbonate, sounds different, brings the weight down, and I mean, why not? Overall the car is pretty light. This one will also have an effect while driving. The design in the rear, you can see again they're repeating those design elements, and pretty strong in the lower bumper part here, and those ones are also protecting you here, by the way, the sensors also for the rear beeper, rear view camera is here. Those ones are protecting you against those typical bumps you get maybe in Paris or something like that. And price point, by the way, is very interesting. Starts about 15,000 euros as a German reference price. And even if you pick the highest trim level Shine here, and for example automatic gearbox, which we have today here, 23,000 euros. And comparing other small SUVs, this is actually quite good price performance ratio. Even more interesting, of course, what will be inside the trunk. How many space have we left there, and what about the flexibility? Let's find out soon. First, the engines. Sorry for the mess with the engine. It's not that clean as the rest of the car. I did not clean the engine from the inside. So we have a 1.2 liter petrol engine, 3-cylinder, 82 horsepower, naturally aspirated. That's the first pick, but 14 seconds to 100 kilometers an hour. That's not so fast. This one here today, 110 horsepower with a turbo. This one can also be combined manual and also automatic gearbox. And then the top engine would be 130 horsepower, the same one. This one then 9.3 seconds to 100, but not available with auto gearbox. And also available with 1.6 liter diesel, 4 cylinders then, either with 100 or 120 horsepower, all front wheel drive. So now to the interior. You can see a bright fabric on the inside, looks good. All other is hard plastics, but at least we have some interesting structures here on the inside that spices it a little bit up. Then also on the inside of the doors you can also put bigger bottles. And then what is really interesting here today, we have the Metropolitan grey style concept. I really like that and would also advise, because that one makes a bright interior. It looks good in this modern Scandinavian style with red contrasts. Wow, those seats look pretty luxurious. They're also pretty thick, and they are indeed comfortable and look so good. So they have great interior concepts. That's what's making this car so unique, and Citroen is really searching unique selling point in those very creative interiors. Also, you have different setups here, not only this one. The standard one would be just black fabric, also called mica. And then next to this Metropolitan grey, there's also urban red. This one then would be the dark, where here is everything dry, would be in dark, but also with the red contrasts. Then there are also two fabric and leather red mixes. One called Hype Mistral, that would be the dark leather red mix, and Hype Colorado, that would be a brown leather red mix. So no animal hides on the seats, I like that. Also sustainable and great styling ideas. It's actually worthwhile to check all them out, but of course here today just one. But I think the styling in the interior definitely plays for the car and again makes the unique selling point. So let's get inside, guys. Shoe tap. Then, well, there's the panoramic roof built inside here, so that doesn't leave me too much headroom to the fabric, but to the glass rather. If you want more headroom, leave out the panoramic roof, but I'll soon show you. It goes 1 meter across the car. It's also pretty interesting if you like that. So, seat control here in length, normal manual. Sometimes it's a little bit strange that you feel that it only fixes on the left side of the seat and that the right side is a little bit, lagging behind, and you have to go forward and backward, that it really jumps in the position. Pump it up, y'all. Seat control lever. Would you buy a t-shirt with that? Maybe like Autogefühl and pump it up, y'all. And the seat lever like a schematic or something? Put me in the comments. The steering wheel can also be adjusted not only in height but also in length. I really like that, so you can find a good driving position right here. Overall, it feels quite spacious here in the front. It also has this van style, maybe as a reminiscence for the Picasso version. Long way right there when you look to the front. So that creates a kind of travel feeling here, together with the rather upright seating position. So you feel quite well, also as a tall driver. The only thing is, even if you have the steering wheel in the highest position, it gets pretty close with your knees here when you're a tall driver. So that's the only thing maybe limiting tall drivers. And now the interior overview, which is pretty interesting. You can hear how they use the bright fabric here and those typical design features, again with the red contrast. I think very well done. It's not the best thing for everyone because it's very special, but I think I like it that they did a daring approach. This one, by the way, is hard plastic, but again, it's a good idea to use a lot of fabric here on the inside. By the way, the standard ventilation, even on the first step, is pretty loud. Not sure if you hear it on camera. Now it's silent, so pretty loud ventilation. You don't hear it anymore when you're really driving a little bit faster, but when you're standing still, you're hearing it pretty much. Here the whole ventilation goes via the infotainment screen. No knob to control the temperature and stuff. This 7-inch screen is the only one that's available. You can get it optional then with the GPS and stuff. Just a volume knob right here, and for warning indicators. The front screen, you know, a lot of that they have maximum heating on the front screen here, and on the rear screen heating, rear windshield, and also to close or open the car. And also interesting that you have this grip control knob. You have just front wheel drive, but you can control different driving modes from the ESC, the stability control. That is pretty interesting. Start stop button there too. And then you have the automatic gearbox. That is also an interesting point. Well, you have a little stair control, not just front and back again. So you go a little bit in a complicated way. That could have been a little bit better. The steering wheel, we know that from the C3, also with the design contrast here. But overall, everything fits together, I think. Standard glove box size, right there. Also some storage space in the top part. And in this lower part, it's also interesting because you can put mobile phone, you can put, you know, beverages there, but it's pretty shallow actually. You can also put your smartphone in the front part there. That fits quite well. Also with connecting the cable, and then you can also get out this whole stuff there and have a little bit more storage space, but then without this this bottle concept there. So what do you think about this one here? And my favorite feature is that we have a small car, but still a proper armrest that can also be adjusted, and of course in the same vehicle style. And interesting also this pretty thick manual handbrake. And those are the instruments. Left side speed, right side RPM. You see again the same design scheme, pretty interesting. And in the middle one, a small digital one for digital speed, or for example the current consumptions we have. Again, interesting that this one here was also scored with the Toyota CHR hybrid. So that proves again my point that you do not need this inbuilt hybrid to save fuel. This one here just also works fine. And the engine even has a little bit more power, at least it felt that way. So now the vent view from the detailed perspective. Well, it's better with a separate knob to control while driving. Just when you leave it on AC 22 degrees all the time, then you'll just be fine with it. This one knob is, by the way, for the volume still left, but you can also control it at the steering wheel. Then sound hotkey here, GPS hotkey. The software is quite okay. You can zoom in and out like on a smartphone with it. Could be a little bit faster, but overall quite okay. Then the temperature hotkey here for vehicle information. Then the app connect when you put in the cable for MirrorLink, Android Auto or Apple CarPlay. And if you still want to do the standard Bluetooth one without the cable, you're also able to do that. And the rear view camera, well, the resolution is not that good, and even more weird, look at the right side, this fake drone view from above. Since this car does not have any cameras in the rear mirrors, it's basically faking a drone view from above, and it is actually just building up when you go to the rear or to the front again. And the thing is, you see, then it builds up the picture, and part of this image you see on the right side is actually not live. And this is the panoramic roof I talked about. So you can either open it like this, then have a real opening. So it's not a choice between, wow, how far it goes open, man. So you have both, you have a sliding roof, you can put it really open. Same time you have a wide panoramic roof, about 1 meter in length. And then for summer times when it gets too hot actually, then you can also add this electric shade. So as for the rear bench, I first want to show you that you can actually slide it forward and backward about 15 centimeters like this. Then you have the difference right there. And that comes pretty handy, makes the interior so flexible in the rear. By the way, also in the rear you have this manual sunshades for the kids. Also an easy and good solution. And when you get inside, well, the front seats, they are pretty comfortable, also very thick. That reduces the rear legroom just a little bit. However, you got this curved seat, the back of the seat, and that again makes the way that it exactly fits when you're with 4 tall adults in here, knee room wise. If you have the panoramic roof, I do hit my head on the ceiling right now. If you leave the panoramic roof out, then again you could also sit here with 190 in height, basically. But in general, you can also have a high seating position here, upright seating position, which is pretty comfortable. And you can also again adjust the rear part when you are exactly on the seat. Just that I would push it more in the front, and I don't have any knee room left then. Other than that, you also have those seat belt holders here in the rear. Again, the nice design too. You can even adjust the angle of the rear bench in a 1/3, 2/3 split, so you can sit a little bit more upright, for example, or a little bit more leaning back. So a good system. And also with this lash, you can flip them completely from here. Top tether on the back part, Isofix on the front part, and you can also just flip the middle part here either as a ski hatch, or also you can have beverage holders right there. So this interior is really pretty flexible, and even better, for example from here, you can put the front seat, the co-driver seat, completely flat, and then can load things through for about 2 meters and 40. That's a pretty nice result, and of course we'll take another look at how this one, the whole loading concept, looks like from the rear. So let's open that hatch. By the way, in the variation of lengths, when you put the bench in the front or in the rear, it's varying 410 to 520 liters in boot space. Like this, you see this is the difference then. So you can very well use it if you want to have a longer trunk. And you can flip the seats from the rear as I've shown you, but if you want the maximum setup for 1,300 liters, then you can also reach over right here and also flip them from here then. By the way, this here, you can also use it to just activate the ski hatch from the rear. Again, a clever solution, but if you do that, you cannot flip them completely. You have to put it back then again. And here then also reaching over to the other side, flipping the second one, well, then sometimes you have to go around anyway. And then you have the maximum loading setup. This cover here, by the way, you can also move it up. Some more space beneath, you can also pull it out completely. But it's actually quite handy because that one then puts it all on the same level. And you can load things through. You can get it a little bit flatter here even when you put the head restraints up and then really push it down. So that is possible. So I think overall a good solution that they have found here. And when you look at this one here then, loading through even through the co-driver side, really well done. Welcome to the driving part. Here with the 1.2 liter petrol engine turbo. It's 110 horsepower because that one is the one you can combine with the automatic gearbox. And you might remember from former Citroen days that they also use the automated manual transmission, which would be a manual gearbox which is controlled by the machine, literally, basically, which felt pretty weird. This one here now is a proper automatic converter gearbox. And we're starting with a small trip here on the motorway, and the first thing we notice is it's really quite loud in here. So that is not the strength of this vehicle. There's obviously a lot of room inside. That's, you know, good for the spacious feeling. But somehow they didn't manage to do the sound insulation that well. So maybe you are hearing that already yourself. I have to raise my voice quite a bit to fight against the wind noise from the tires, from the cars in front of me, and also the ones that are overtaking me and stuff, you know, for example. The steering itself is, you see, there's not much reaction in the lower angle positions, so it's pretty loose also. Doesn't feel that natural. Also now, especially at some higher speeds, the car does tilt quite a lot when I'm doing like this. It's really like meow, meow, meow. So the suspension is rather set on a soft tone, which is not necessarily bad, because you will not race with this vehicle. So in the city, and we're soon getting also to some more traffic situation, in the city that won't be that bad, that you rather have the soft setup. With this very wide, wide area in front of you with the whole cockpit, that one accounts rather for a good travel vehicle, because it somehow feels like a van from the inside, you know, like one of those older vans, but on the outside it has this SUV look. And maybe that's also accounting for the fact that they are also replacing the Picasso model with that one here. So, you know, that's a general trend to rather go for the SUVs and not for the vans. Here, for example, when I'm steering, you now see there's hardly any feeling in the steering wheel. It's totally artificial. Again, when you're parking in and out and you don't want to use much force, then it is an advantage, as you can easily, you know, go left and right. So parking in and out is super easy with this vehicle. That's again an advantage for driving in the city. The design we talked about before also cheers you up while driving, you know, looking at the Scandinavian style, bright fabric. That's also something that keeps up the good mood while driving. Also, you know, with the bright ceiling. So far I had the top here closed. You can also open that. As I showed you earlier, you can also open that completely. It's not only a shade, so that gives you a lot of light in the interior. Again, the disadvantage is that on the rear seats you'll have less headroom. So if you're driving with 12 people in the rear, you should leave out that one. But of course, on camera now, also while driving, it looks pretty good, doesn't it? The automatic gearbox, by the way, you don't feel it so much. Sometimes in the lower gears, you have the feeling that it kicks in a little bit too harsh, but you know, rated on a very high level now. Overall, this one here, the engine that is also combinable with the automatic gearbox, gives you just more comfort in city driving. And again, if you want to keep the price lower, you should stick with the manual gearboxes, as those ones are of course cheaper. So rolling here in the city traffic is something which this car is good for. Then you also don't realize that the noise insulation is not that good on the higher speeds. And you have the higher seating position here, you have a good overview, you feel pretty relaxed. That's what this car is really good for. You know, driving around in the city, finding narrow parking spots, using the space you got on the inside while you don't have so much length on the exterior. So this car is also very easy to drive and uncomplicated. So you don't have to learn so many functions first. You just hop in and start driving, and that's also something which makes you comfortable in city driving. So as this one's also not tempting you to race, that will also have a good effect on the consumption. You know, when you keep it steady. Although considering that this is a very small vehicle, the consumption could also be lower. At the moment I was rolling down now this hill, so the consumption went down. Yeah, I'm accelerating now a little bit. The 3-cylinder sound is very distinguishable. We noticed that with other three-cylinder engines, the three-cylinder engines actually sound a little bit more sonorous, a little bit more low frequencies than some of the four-cylinders, which is pretty interesting for sure. You can also see in which gear you are at the moment. So in the fifth gear of the six gears that are available. At the moment we are at an average consumption of about 5 liters on 1 kilometer. So you can score that if you really keep it slow with the throttle overall. So that is actually possible. Realistically, when you drive higher speeds on the motorway, this car as an SUV form also doesn't stand that well against the wind. Or if you do some acceleration tests, if you drive a little faster inside a city, then you will also score some higher figures like 6 liters or something. But 5 is possible. 6 is maybe a little bit more realistic. And you might remember that with the Citroen C3, the normal passenger car, we also had a consumption of 6 liters. And considering that, the result so far is actually quite good. So what happens now is the famous German Reißverschlussverfahren. Even hard to spell it when you're actual German. You know, there's then like with a zipper, like 1 car left, 1 car right, 1 car left, 1 car right. Well, not always it's working pretty perfectly. Here now it worked pretty well. But sometimes people think they have to go in the Reißverschluss into the zipper like a kilometer before. And sometimes people don't realize the best is to use the 2 lanes you have available really the full way. And then they get annoyed when people use it on the full way on the side that is being reduced. So it's always fight on German streets. That's how it is. But in other countries you have different problems. So many different traffic habits all the different country have. We've talked about it a lot on different reviews when we're in different countries. It's always funny to see. So now what about acceleration on the motorway? At the moment driving 80, and you can also go into different driving modes. For example, a sport mode, like a S mode. And well, let's see if that makes any difference. Doing 80 to 100 and pushing the pedal through. That's still pretty reasonable for a small 3-cylinder engine, isn't it? So I think that's pretty much okay. I mean, with the sport mode, I now deactivated it, and in that moment the car shifted up a little bit. So it's not that big of a difference than with other sport modes in vehicles. But if you want a little bit more boost and you say, I want to do an acceleration, you can pick it. Although when you reach down there, it doesn't give you the best overview while driving. Same is, by the way, with winter mode. This small snowflake symbol that reduces the throttle input, that you don't have so much wheel spin, for example. You can also theoretically use it to save some fuel. I'm not sure if I would use either modes. The same thing goes for the fact that this one is always 2-wheel drive, always front-wheel drive. So you do not have an all-wheel drive as with other SUVs, but a lot of the small new SUVs do not have all-wheel drive because people don't necessarily need it. Some might do, but the majority of customers don't. So that's the thing. Then you have this all-grip control here, which I've showed you statically earlier. Then you also can go into a snow mode, which is adjusting the traction control, or you can have this mud mode. Here, for example, again, the car's tilting quite a lot when I'm going off the motorway. So that also makes you drive the car a little bit slower in general. You also have a sand mode, if you're driving through the desert with a Citroen C3 Aircross. Yeah, that might happen. And there's also the ESP or ESC deactivation mode. That might be if you're stuck somewhere really and you need some spin to get out. Well, Usually you do not need the driving modes, and as it's two-way drive mode anyway, and you can also control it with just the throttle input, you can leave it on the normal mode. Again, if you're really, stuck somewhere on a wet surface, wet grass, some muddy area, you've been, do you go camping with this vehicle? I'm not so sure about that. Whatever the situation is, then at least you have the possibility to reduce the stability control, that you can have a little bit more wheel spin, then you can use those modes. But in general, you just all leave it in the normal automatic mode. The cruise control, we can set it on the left side. Well, you can hardly see it. I can hardly see it myself. So you can set it here then. It's really hard to look at it, so that you can pick between limit and cruise. If you do a speed limit or a cruise control, usually I use it for cruise control, and then you can set minus and plus with this extra column you have at the steering wheel, and then the car keeps the speed. It's just a normal cruise control, not an adaptive one. Considering the car segment, that's also quite fine. One thing I have to look up in the price list, if there's a blind spot monitor available. If that's really interesting for you, you can ask me again in the comments later. Then maybe I already have checked it up. At the moment the vehicle is not equipped with it. Again, I will check the price list if this option does exist. If it does, I always advise you to go for it. So when a car offers that kind of stuff, go for it. Blind spot warner is very important. Here now cruising countryside, and also with the cruise control, it's also pretty relaxing. What the car is, doing very well. And again, I'm enjoying the upright seating position. That's also a difference if you're thinking about the normal C3 and the C3 Aircross. This one here gives you this feeling to have a bigger car. Well, it is a bigger car on the one way. It's also more expensive. But overall the car conveys a bigger feeling than it actually is. That is one strength of the small SUVs. They pretend to be a little bit bigger, as they also have good room usage on the inside. And you can still steer it around on the exterior pretty well. Oh, Focus RS in the stealth blue. Always like this very bright blue colors. By the way, the overview to the sides. Well, considering the A-pillar, that one is pretty blocking because it all goes so far in the front. Then again, you have this extra window right there. So, well, basically you're fine by that. To the rear, you can see where the car is ending pretty well. Also to the sides, the windows are quite upright. So you'll also be fine just by that. The third window there, which has this painting on the exterior, of course it is limiting the view, but so far in the rear you usually don't have to look. Usually it's more about the second window. Here, by the way, now when I'm accelerating from the zero, sometimes I feel that the automatic gearbox sets in a little bit too late. If you're not afraid to spend a little bit more money, I would still go for the automatic gearbox because, again, as I said earlier, it's a real automatic gearbox, converter gearbox. It's basically doing the job quite fine, and it's so much more relaxing to drive it. So it would rather be a price point if you really want to go for it or not. Controlling the GPS while driving, you can leave it in this temperature mode where you can then just click, then you have it easily accessible as there's no separate button for it. When you are someone who has put the GPS, the AC unit, well, it's GPS infotainment unit, yes, of course, but the AC unit in specific, if you have it to 22 degrees Celsius and AC automatic, then probably don't care. But some others, they like to switch it around a little bit. Sometimes AC on, sometimes off, some a little bit warmer, some a little bit colder. Then of course, if you have a real knob, it's a little bit more handy. But if you leave it in this mode like this and you're not looking at the GPS, then you can also pretty easily access the vent strength from here. That's still quite okay. So now also with a little bit more uphill, a little bit faster driving, we're about 5.4 liters on 100 kilometers. So I think 5.5 liter 100 kilometers is an average consumption which we can live with for a small SUV, and we can take that as an average. And the question is, how many kilometers a year are you driving? I'm not sure if that one would really be paying off as a diesel here. It's not a very big car. And when you're driving more than 20,000 kilometers a year, then you might think about the 4-cylinder diesel 1.6 liter of displacement. Other than that, you'll be just fine with the 3-cylinder petrol engine here. As you could see with the acceleration also on the motorway, it is still enough for the car because the car is indeed pretty light. You know, they had some weight savings also with those polycarbonate windows I mentioned earlier. So the engine is sufficient considering the weight of the car. So many impressions from the C3 Aircross. I hope you enjoyed this driving part here together with me. And now our conclusion for today, Citroen C3 Aircross. It's for sure a very interesting vehicle. It's not exactly my design favorite. It overall appears a little bit ball-like, but then again, it's very unique and they use a lot of different interesting design features as we talked about earlier. Especially the interior is very attractive, also in the combination we've shown you today with this, Scandinavian style, bright fabric. So they have really achieved a unique selling point there, because they are now again really different from the competition. There was a time where Citroen was just, you couldn't really argue why would you go for it. And now, well, I mean, there might be other cars better in dynamic driving and stuff, but they now especially offer unique interiors. That's at the moment the new unique Citroen selling point. Also, they set all sails on the comfortable driving, so it's not sporty, rather comfortable, you have to know that. And again, between comfort and sportiness, it's never bad or good, it's about what you prefer. Also, what I realized is that the price, especially the price-performance ratio is actually quite good. Some parts in the interior could be a little bit better, the driving could be a little bit more exciting, but overall I think, the whole package the car is offering. Not so long on the exterior, but still enough room and especially flexibility on the interior, and then again this unique style. So if you like this unique style the car has, I think it offers a very good package. That's, I think, the main characteristic about this very vehicle. I hope you enjoyed our insight here today. Of course, I'm looking forward to your feedback and what I can say to the other competitors, from the small SUVs we've driven. Again, price point is very important here, and I think it doesn't go into one exact direction. The consumption that is also being offered is also very interesting. So, as I told you lately, with the hybrid system with the Toyota, we had the very same consumption. That was also another point I would like to make. And now, looking forward to your feedback. Thank you.